Good afternoon from Marie at SEM Creations. Thank you for reading my blog featuring the floating frame cards. I've done a short video basically because it's almost impossible to write instructions for these cards. You have to kind of see what I am doing. So you do need Glad Press and Seal, which is a sealing wrap I buy from Amazon, and it is different from our UK cling film because it has more stick on one side and none on the other. So it is what you need for creating these cards. So you get 70 foot. If I'm honest, I don't know how much it is. I can't remember, but Glad Press and Seal, easily available on Amazon. I am using hand-penned petals as a set for this card. You will have seen on my blog as well, these two cards are featured. So essentially, I'm going to run through exactly how we create that. So hand-penned petals does come with dies, but I don't have the dies. So what I did on very vanilla cardstock, I stamped both of these images multiple times, and I used crumb cake as my outer line. So it's entirely up to you whether you use crumb cake, Sahara sand, whether you use the green that you're going to use for the petals, your choice. So I used Pear Pizzazz for the green for the petals, green for the leaves. I used Pear Pizzazz, and then I used shades of purple. So we have Fresh Freesia, Highland Heather, and Gorgeous Grape. And I have two sets of cards already cut, because this is how to make an easy way to make two cards in one. So I have a card base in Gorgeous Grape, first layer in Highland Heather, and then a layer of the Fresh Freesia, and the other one has a very vanilla card base, Highland Heather and Fresh Freesia. So they're the colours we are focusing on. So what I have done already off camera, based on the fact it's not very exciting to watch, I have essentially stamped the two outlines, and then you have this inner fits inside this one, and then you've got the various different sizes of petals, and it isn't an exact match. So what I did in some instances, and what you may be able to see from here, is I stamped in two different colours. So it's a very, very kind of casual way of inking in. So what I need to do, so what I've got is a vanilla card base, which is 1/2 centimetre smaller than my smallest layer on the card. And then what I've done is created a pattern. So none of these pieces should overlap. They do need to kind of fit into each other. So what I've done is and actually I might just cut one off there. Essentially I've cut out the whole piece, but then where parts of that don't fit, I've just cut bits off. Essentially because I want to get things close but not overlapping. So, you know, you're going to get gaps, so that's absolutely fine. But this just allows you to get as close as you can with multiple flowers. Now, you can see there I've got a bit of a gap there, which will prevent us floating, having a floating frame fully. And there's a bit of one here. So what I'm going to do is just knocked that. So the key thing is not knocking it once you've got them in position, and just keep sort of playing around with it. So what I'm actually going to do on this one is I'm going to trim that stalk off. so that I can add another flower image. So just spend a little bit of time getting to the point where you're happy with it. And I'm going to add, I'm going to cut this flower out. So as I say, it does come with dies, so if you want to buy the dies, then obviously this would work with any sort of die cut image. It's also great for punching. Obviously be aware that if you are, as I am doing, fussy cutting around those shapes, it just takes you a little bit longer. You can use slightly smaller images, but just consider, once you've seen this, how that affects the card. So you see that one then can sit in that area, and then I need a little something to go in there, which I'm thinking could actually be part of that. So you can rewatch this from my blog whenever you need to. It's an unlisted YouTube video, but keep referring back to my blog if you want to recreate the cards. But just think about the stamp sets that you've got, the punches that you've got, die cuts. As I say, you can fussy cut anything, just makes it slightly more time consuming. And what I'm thinking there is that one can go that way round to fill that space in. So I'm not overly concerned about having gaps, but they definitely can't overlay. They do need to be independent of each other. So I think I'm quite pleased with that. So then what we do is we will take a bit of, I mean, it's just as bad as our UK cling film, to be fair, as in it sticks to anything and everything, but it's very much stickier on one side than it is on the other. So I'm going to lay that over, hopefully without moving my images, then just stick it in a few places just to make sure those pieces don't move. Once they are all fitted, you need just to have it fitted to that cream background a little bit as well. Then that whole piece is going to lift up, and I'm going to cut around that edge. Obviously that leaves me a bit of press and seal to use on another occasion. So I've literally just cut off the excess. And the last one I did was a rectangle, so I might just show you doing one with a circle. You've seen the pictures of the rectangle, so you're just cutting those pieces off so that we end up with that piece like that. Let's see what we have. So I'm going to take one of the circle dies. Let's have a look size wise, and I might take it off centre slightly. So decide on whether you want a scallop edge, straight edge, where you want that die to be. So then I take that to my Stampin' Cut and emboss. So if you just run that through once, that will cut through the layers of card and the press and seal. So that what you then have is two pieces. So the next stage, hopefully this is all making perfect sense. But you can see that is going to fit over there, and then that circle is going to fit in there. So the next stage is to take the Very Vanilla or whatever base card you used away from the rest of the card. Then we use, now I am going to, if I've got some handy, so dimensionals are what you need to, so smaller pieces, dimensional minis. But essentially we are going to cover the back of this with dimensionals. Now always remember, like with these kind of end of sheets, don't throw that edge away. So this is really handy for the bigger pieces. So however you want to do it. The other thing that I do love for this, although because it's a different thickness and I've started with these, you can't mix and match, is the foam sheet, but it is thicker than our standard dimensionals, so choose to either cut up the foam sheet or use dimensionals. You can't mix and match the two. So that's one sheet finished, where I've got those little areas. Just want to, oh, managed to pull that one off without the backing. So we just want this to be nice and secure. So this is what creates the float of the floating frame. So you do need, sorry, I'm just gonna try and find some larger, there we go. We'll be there all day putting small ones on. So let's use some larger dimensionals. So this essentially is why we have different sizes of dimensionals. So we can just create whatever. I'm just going to put a small one into that area, and just because it's slightly loose, I'm going to put one in each of those areas. So I'm going to put again one there, one there. So just whatever your preferred foam is, that should give us a good amount of security. So then, remembering where you started, just peel off the back of each of those dimensionals. And do let me know if you do try this technique, or whether maybe you've got some samples of you having used it before. It's fantastic to see different stamp sets. So if if you've done it, and in the comments, then perhaps just let me know which stamp set you used. To create the cards. And so the other one that I used for the card that's in the pumpkin pie, and so Saffron is the other new set that we have, Flowers of Friendship. So this is the hand-penned petals. So the only disadvantage of using lots of dimensionals is you've got to get all the tops off. It's easy to tell whether you've got all the tops off or not because they go shiny because of the glue. So if you have a look and you've still got the matte, the other thing that I have seen people do is colour across the back of every dimensional. So they might put a red felt tip line or something across, so whichever way you prefer, but again remembering where you started. That's got everyone except that one. There we go. So now what we want to do, so actually I can already see that's a little bit wonky there. Just going to trim that a little bit. So then what I want to do, and at this stage it doesn't matter which way round it is. Ooh, it's alive. This is the not so easy bit. So with any luck, there we go. Oh, 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 oh. So I might need to trim that base card a little bit. Yes, I do. Not the end of the world. Let's just trim that edge off, otherwise it looks slightly strange. Right, so once those dimensionals are all set, I need to turn that over and trim that, so you don't want that piece to be sticking out over the card. Now what we have to do is peel off that press and seal. Now this does need to be a really gentle exercise, and generally try and pull it straight back without lifting it. Oh, lost me. Don't worry too much if it pulls a little bit off. Not the end of the world. Although now I've got to try and pick that edge off. There, it might start. So it's just finding an easier place that you can actually start. But in the UK, our cling film does not have this one sticky side, one non-sticky side, which is why you do need to get this Glad press and seal. And then need to be a little bit careful there where we've got that edge. Pull that off. Then that layers onto that card. Oh, once you've peeled off the press and seal, throw it straight in the bin. I'm getting in a sticky mess there, so I can just see it's slightly off there, so I'm just going to turn it over and trim it. So don't panic if it is slightly off, you can just trim where needed. Then I'm actually going to stick this to the card using wet glue, just because it's actually quite hard to tape it. Then what I shall Just really impressive. It looks, I think it just looks fantastic. And it's a technique I haven't done for an awful long time. I'm not even sure what reminded me this was even a technique that I've done many years ago. So just a little bit of wriggle room there as we get that lined up. That's why we use wet glue. Let's just leave that one to dry and then we'll do this one. So exactly the same again, is removing that cream or very vanilla white, whatever scrap you used. Although having called that scrap, the other consideration is that does fit in there. So if I wanted to do a sentiment, I could use that piece again. I would cut it smaller, but you could use that again. So again, we go through our little process with our dimensionals. Oops. Not quite so many to put on this smaller piece. But remembering all these little pieces around the edge. So essentially, if you do get too much overlay, they don't stay in position, which is why we try and have a distance. I mean, you know, there's a tiny bit of overlay there. That's not a big issue. But we don't want too much of it. And I think we might need to lose that little, we'll try and retain that little bit there. What is that little bit? Well, actually, let's try and retain that bit. We might be a little bit. So you can see those dimensionals are slightly big for the circle, so I'm just going to trim those. But it just means we'll be able to fix those little edges. So you can see how we're getting 2 cards out of 1. What I'm actually going to do first with this one is just use Stamp and Seal to put these layers together before I put that. It's slightly easier to put this thing, the whatever section you pulled out. You can use rectangles, rounds, whatever you prefer. And I think the only consideration for the positioning of this circle is where you might put the sentiment. So do you want the sentiment at the top or at the bottom? Do you want to add some ribbon? Do you want to put the sentiment on the card? But you know, entirely up to you. So I'm actually going to put that fairly central, I think. I mean, the other consideration is, do you want that card? I might do it that way round. You know, which way round do you want the card? How do you want to add the sentiment? So entirely up to you. But this is how you quickly create 2 cards whilst creating one slightly more time-consuming floating frame. Totally appreciate the floating frame piece isn't quick. Obviously quicker if you can use stamped images and a punch like the Flowers of Friendship. Let's just have a quick, you can see how they are all shiny. I do want to keep that centre flower the right way up, so I'm going to put that right in the middle. Just making sure the dimensionals are all stuck, and then we take that glad off. Then I shall add some sentiments and you will see the final cards on the blog, which hopefully is what tempted you to come and watch this video because you saw it and wanted to have a go yourself. So thank you for reading my blog and engaging in my blog. I really appreciate that. I obviously do Facebook lives. I have an Instagram. My Facebook lives generally go to YouTube, but there is also some different ones that go on to YouTube, and the ones on my blog. So just very carefully taking that press and seal off. So hopefully that was clear. If you do have any questions, please do drop a little note into my blog, and I will answer those for you. So there's my 2 cards. I'll add the sentiments and I will get those posted onto my blog. And as I say, that's hopefully what brought you to this video. So thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again.